Okay, we're about to finish up the book of Numbers, and as you recall, in the first half of the book, we cover events that occurred in the second year in the desert. Then in the sixth parsha, we skip 38 years, and now the generation of men that had left Egypt passed away because of the event of the spies. The children have been raised. They're now about to go into Israel, and then parsha 6, 7, 8, 9 deal with events that occur in the 40th year in the desert. And primarily, we're going to be covering, in these parshas here, different wars, different nations we're going to have to confront as we get closer to the borders of the land of Israel. They're going to try to stop us, or they're going to try to bring about our downfall, our moral downfall as a nation. So I think it's wise at this point to point out the various nations that come up in the Torah. They don't just come up in these parshas here, but they're also going to be mentioned earlier in earlier parshas in the Torah. But let's get a comfort level with them because, as I said, they're going to be mentioned numerous times. So here goes. So here are the nations. We have Amalek. That was the first nation to attack the Jewish people after leaving Egypt. After we crossed the Red Sea, no one would attack us, but Amalek is, and Amalek is seen as the arch enemy of the Jewish people. In fact, Haman from the Purim story comes from Amalek. Then we have Edom. Edom was founded by Jacob's brother Esau. Edom in Hebrew means red, and Esau was called red because he sold his birthright to Jacob back in Genesis for a bowl of soup, which was red, and eventually his nation is known as Edom. Over here in parsha number 6, the Jewish people are going to ask for permission to go through the land of Edom, and they'll be peaceful, of course, and pay for whatever they take and use, but Edom does not give permission for them to go through. Then we have the Amori and the Bashan. Now, these were two mighty nations that we take on also in parsha number 6, and we are victorious in battle. I mentioned Og here. Og was the king of Bashan, and he's a fascinating personality in the Torah. Tradition says he was actually a survivor from the flood story, that he survived the flood with Noah. He was hanging on as a giant onto the ark from the outside. He was saved by Noah, who fed him. And he has a long history, of course, and eventually he's felled by Moses, also in battle in parsha number 6. Then we have two more nations, Moab and Midian. Now, these two nations are scared, in fact, terrified, because of what happened to the Amori and Bashan were much mightier than they. So the king of Moab, a man named Balak, ends up hiring a non-Jewish prophet named Bilam to curse the Jewish people. And I mentioned Bilam here because he's also a famous personality in the Torah. He gets permission to go by God on condition that whatever words God puts in his mouth, Bilam must say. So here in parsha number 7, Bilam goes to Balak, the king of Moab, and he ends up blessing the Jewish people again and again and again, to the point that the king actually just says, get out of here. But that's all in parsha number 7, a fascinating story. Then we have also an episode with the Midianites who use their women to get the Jewish men to commit moral trespass, and that's also going to be the end of parsha number 7, which is going to cause a great plague amongst the Jewish people. And later on in parsha number 9, we're going to fight a war of vengeance against the Midianites over here. And then I'm going to mention the Philistines. The Philistines don't come up in these parshas. They're really mentioned in the book of Genesis a number of times, but I want to point them out. So let's look at a map of biblical Israel just to see where these nations are. We have Amalek and Edom to the south. The Philistines you can see along the coast, right? There's Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, nations over here, the Philistines. Then we have to the east, the Dead Sea, the Ammonites and the Moabites. And then we have Bashan and the Amori over here, a little bit more to the north. So that's where these nations are situated. Then finishing up the book of Numbers in 8, 9, 10, we have the inheritance of the land, how the Jewish people are going to go in and take over the land of Israel from those who are living there and establish themselves in the boundaries of the land. Now remember, this is a very strange situation. Most people live in a land, become more sophisticated, and establish a social structure. Here, the Jewish people have an entire social structure, a constitution, in fact, as they live in the desert in this spiritual incubator. They're surrounded by these clouds of glory. They have the manna falling from the heavens. They have this rock producing water. Now they've got to go in and take over the land. So how are they going to do that? How do they divvy up the land amongst the different tribes? So here we have the 12 tribes of Israel. We're learning these parshas. There's actually a lottery which is done, and the tribes are going to find out which land is theirs. I want to point out also we have Reuven, Gad, and part of the tribe of Manasseh on the east side of the Jordan River. These tribes actually requested of Moses in parsha number 9 that they should remain on the east side of the Jordan because they had great flocks, and this land was very fertile for them. Moses was very upset. I mean, after rejecting the land of Israel because of the spies This would be a terrible thing. So they end up promising they'll go into the land of Israel, they'll fight the war to help establish and settle the land, and only then will they return to their boundaries over here. That's 8, 9, and 10. We also have the Jewish laws of inheritance, how land is passed from generation to generation. We also have special cities called refuge cities, that if someone were to accidentally kill someone, they'd have to run to these cities that were populated by the Levite tribes. And if they were guilty, they'd have to live there for a certain prescribed amount of time until the high priest dies, and only then could they return to their family and their land. And that also is mentioned a number of times in these parshas, 8, 9, and 10. So that brings about the end of the book of Numbers. And we always conclude a book of the Torah with the words, Chazak, Chazak, v'nit chazek. Be strong, and may we be strengthened. We've now concluded book number 4 in the Torah, the book of Numbers. All right, let's do a little review. Let's get rid of everything here, and here we go. 6 through 10, we're in the 40th year in the desert. 6, 7, 8, 9, we're fighting wars, and here are some of the nations we confront. We have Amalek, we have Edom, the Amori, Bashan with their king Og. We have Moab, who hires Bilam the prophet, Midian and the Philistines. Here's our map. To the south, we have Amalek and Edom, Philistines over here to the west, Moab and Ammon to the east of the Dead Sea, and then Bashan and the Amori over here further north. And then 8, 9, 10, we have inheritance of the land, and we talked about the 12 tribes situating themselves throughout the land of Israel, how we're going to settle it, how we pass on our inheritance from one generation to the next, and the special cities that dot the land for those who seek refuge.